Yes, would you ask Mr. Hoban to come back in, please? Right, Mr. Hoban, you ready to carry on?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hoban, can we go back to SEA 30130034, which is the email from Neil Crawford to you of the 30th of March. We saw this email string earlier, and this is now the top of the email, sent on that day at 12:49. Hi, John. Ben Bailey from Harley's is who you might ask for. And he gives you his phone number. Had you spoken to Neil Crawford again in the days before that email?
I believe so, but I can't be absolutely certain. As I said, we had a number of conversations over the time.
Did you also did you ask to speak to someone at Harley, or was this Mr. Crawford suggesting it?
I can't recall. Sorry.
Did you speak to Ben Bailey?
As I said,
Right.
This is 5 years ago.
You don't remember whether you do or you didn't? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Right. Now, if we go to SEA 30130036, please, we can see that about an hour and a half later on the same day, 14:22, you email a group of people, including Ben Bailey and Ricky Kay at Ciderise, as you can see, and also Terry Ashton at Eggs Over. And you say that your interpretation, and I'm summarising, is that of diagram 33 was that the detail between compartment floors and the cladding is not a cavity barrier and should be a fire stop to at least 120 minutes. I'm summarising the email. Were you aware of any debate within the industry or within BCO circles about whether diagram 33 required a fire stop or a cavity barrier within a rain screen cladding system?
I believe I had subsequent discussions with Paul afterwards, and it, as I say, there was a confusion about the word fire break and fire stopping and cavity barrier, and that's where I believe the confusion arose.
Indeed.
But in answer to your question,
right.
Sorry, I'm not aware, as far as I can recall.
Now we then go to SEA 50265, which is the next email from Neil Crawford the following day, 31st of March 2015, and he says, hi John, unfortunately this problem is not going away. The subject of fire barriers is raising a lot of concern on site, not least because of programme and cost. I forwarded a copy of diagram 33 and the typical floor detail, and we are all miffed, I think he might be mystified, I'm not sure, as to why this detail is not a cavity barrier in this location. Please see attached. The relationship between the back of the slab and cladding remains the same as the original cladding, concrete, is retained, and therefore the integrity of this relationship at floor level has not been affected. The new cladding constitutes an additional layer applied on top, not a new floor slab interface, and therefore the interpretation is that this constitutes a cavity barrier and not a fire stop. This has now become something of an issue on site due to programme bottleneck, and so your earliest response to this would be appreciated. Now, he annotated a copy of diagram 33, and he attached that to the email. Do you remember seeing that?
Not now.
Right.
Not now. As
Okay. Well, I'll just put it up in front of you and see if you do. It's EXO 401296. And you can see that here is diagram 33, and he puts in red writing in a box in the left-hand bottom corner of the diagram. Our fire stopping is in the grey location and not between floor slab stroke back of retained concrete cladding. You see that. Did you have any thoughts about that?
I can't recall, sorry.
Let's go to HAR 13719, which is the final email in this run. And I want to start at page 2. Where you write to Neil Crawford, copied to Simon Lawrence on the 1st of April 2015, and you say, "Thank you for your email and for the attached drawings showing typical cladding details. The matter has now become more clearer. I would advise you that I have no adverse comments to make on the proposal shown on your drawing, 127906 110 Rev 0, with regards to compliance with parts B2 and B3 in Schedule 1 of the building regulations." Did you mean parts B3 and B4 there? Or did you mean...
It should have meant B2, B3 and B4.
It should have meant B2,
B2,
B3 and B4.
B4, yeah.
I see. Now, we can see that you now have no comments, no adverse comments. What caused you to change your mind?
I believe I had discussions with Paul. As I say, it's so long ago. As I say, it became clearer. It just became clearer.
What was it that clarified your mind?
I'd only be guessing, and
No, I don't want you to guess. Was this the first time in your career that you'd been asked to give a view on cavity barriers within a rain screen cladding system, do you think?
Yes, it was the first time.
Was this the first time that you'd looked at diagram 33 in the context of a rain screen cladding system?
Yes, as a rain screen cladding system, yes. But
When
not,
you... I'm sorry. Yes, when you said... I'm so sorry. Do you want to continue your answer?
Yeah, but obviously I looked at it in relation to other buildings that I dealt with.
When you said you had no adverse comments to make, as we can see here from this email, did you mean in relation to the cladding system as a whole, as detailed on the drawing he was sending you, to which you refer, or do you mean just the cavity barrier issue that had prompted Neil Crawford to send you the drawing in the first
cavity
place?
barrier, I should have perhaps made it clearer
Right.
at that stage.
Right. I see. It may just be worth looking at the drawing itself. It's SEA 13045.
Or, sorry, may I qualify that?
Yes.
In relation to the horizontal and the side rise cavity barriers.
The compartment floors and walls.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
So you weren't dealing with cavity barriers around the windows, question?
No, I was dealing with the horizontal
Right.
and the vertical.
I see. Well, this is the drawing that you were sent, and there's nothing on here, I think you can take it from me, that actually tells you what the rating of the cavity barrier to be used was. Do you recall noting that there wasn't anything about the rating?
I think in other emails there was referring to the standard.
Well, we certainly saw the Ricky Kay email earlier, but there's nothing in the drawing about it. Did that not ring a bell with you, or an alarm bell, particularly?
Now, as I say, we were discussing the standard of the fire barriers in various previous emails, and it was a question of whether it was 120 or the lower standard.
Yes. If we just blow up, just moving on then, while we're on this drawing, you can see that it's dated the 24th of September 2013, and this is now March 15. Did you wonder why you were being sent a drawing of that antiquity at this point in the project?
Well, that was the drawing that was proposed. I
Indeed it was.
assume that that's what they were working to. You know, they were giving me an up-to-date or a drawing that they were constructing, because that's the drawing that was sent to me.
Did you not go back to them and say, well, why are you sending me a drawing that's 18 months out of date?
Well, I don't know whether it was 18 months out of date.
Okay, well, if we just blow up the proposed section typical bay on the top right. We may not be able to see enough of it. I'm not sure we can see enough of it for me to ask my question, but did you realise that this... that may help. You can see, I think, from... There we are. If we just go across, you can see from the various references to H92, so the fifth bubble down, there's a reference to zinc cladding, and also halfway down, zinc, and 2/3 of the way down, reference to zinc, or at the very bottom also, H92 zinc. Did it not strike you that you were being sent a drawing which described zinc panels in circumstances where you knew by this stage that the swap had been made to ACM?
I was focusing on the question that they asked in relation to cavity barriers.
Right.
So I felt I was answering their question as regards that particular item.
And we can see that this drawing doesn't show cavity barriers at jamb or sill level around the windows. Again, did it strike you as something from this?
As I mentioned to you before, it's my view that there was cavity barriers by framework supporting the windows.
Right. Now, can we then turn to some questions about workmanship? I think you say in your second statement, at paragraph 34G, that you weren't trained to check on the tested and specified method of installation of cavity barriers.
That was in relation to, cladding systems. Sorry. I should have been more clear in my answer.
That's all right, but in relation to cladding systems,
Yes.
that's probably good enough for my purposes. Did that lack of training mean that in relation to this rain screen system, you were not able to identify whether cavity barriers were properly cut into position?
No.
And whether horizontal barriers were installed in a vertical orientation?
No.
What about the ability to spot whether cavity barriers which had an intumescent strip had been installed with the strip facing the wrong way, so into the building? Would you have been trained to spot that and pick it up?
I would pick it up through reading the documents, but I didn't have any, as it were, formal training, but
Right.
something that I would know through reading the documentation that was the way it was to be done, as I say, because the vertical barriers had to be close fitting to the actual cladding system themselves.
Yes.
And the lugs would have been at a different centre to the horizontal ones, and the horizontal barriers had a gap in order that it ventilated.
Now, Ben Bailey, who was the project manager of Harley on the site from February 2015 onwards, has said to the inquiry, having been shown some photographs taken of the building after the fire, that he was shocked to discover that there were horizontal cavity barriers installed in a vertical position, and also, what is more, the wrong way round, with the intumescent strips facing into the building. Why did you not pick those errors up as part of your inspections?
The areas I saw were fine. As I say, it was a process that they were putting the barriers in and covering up as they went. And the areas that I saw were okay.
Did you check the installation of vertical and horizontal cavity barriers and their correctness as part of your routine visits?
When I went up on the climber, yes, I did.
You did. Can I ask you to go to BSD 401422, please? This is an email from Neil Crawford to Terry Ashton of the 18th of September 2014. Now, you're not copied in on this, but he says to Terry Ashton in the second sentence, having just finished several weeks of fire-stopping checks on the Kensington Aldridge Academy, where John Hoban crawled into almost every conceivable cavity possible with a torch, including nearly falling through a suspended ceiling, we need to be clear on our position before going to building control. So, when you were going into these cavities, were you looking at fire stopping or cavity barriers themselves on that project, KALC?
It'd be a mixture.
Mixture. Why didn't you take the same thorough approach on the Grenfell Tower project that you were taking on?
I did.
You didn't, as far as we can see it, crawl into almost every conceivable cavity with a torch, did you?
I think he's over-exaggerating there in his description. As I say, this was suspended ceilings, this sort of thing.
Right.
So, as I say, it's internally, as I say, looking at cavity barriers in suspended ceilings.
Did you actually ever get to see cavity barriers on site before parts of them were covered up by layers of insulation?
There was works in progress, and I saw them working on them.
Right.
And as I say, I saw, what I saw at the time was satisfactory.
Well, we've had some evidence earlier in the inquiry, and I'm summarising it, that the cavity barriers, when fitted, wouldn't be exposed for very long because the wind would remove them, and they needed to be held in place, essentially, by the application of the insulation. My question is, did you ever see the fitting of the cavity barriers before the insulation was applied and covered them up?
I went at a moment in time, and I saw what I saw on those particular days.
I know, but I'm just asking you whether, when you went and saw what you saw on those particular days, did you ever see cavity barriers fitted before they were covered up by insulation?
I can't recall.
Did you ever notice on site that horizontal cavity barriers on the spandrels at the compartment floor lines were located at a distance from the head of the window, so some way up the spandrel panel?
Not on the ones that I viewed.
Right. Did you ever notice that the Studio E drawings showed a cavity barrier immediately at the head of the window?
In the floor line, in line with the floor, yes.
Did anybody tell you that when you went to site on the occasions you did, that a decision had been made to raise the cavity barrier even higher than had been shown in the Harley drawings, to a position higher than that, so as to avoid penetrating the EPDM membrane around the windows?
No.
You don't. Did you ever yourself measure the distance of the cavity barrier above the windows from the head of the window itself?
I looked at them on site and saw that the ones that I checked were in line with the floor.
Did you ever see a mock-up or jig or physical model created either by Harley or by Osborne Berry, which showed where the precise location where the cavity barriers should be, and measure that against the drawings?
I wasn't invited to see a mock-up.
Right. Can I just ask you one or two questions then about the windows? Can I start with RYD 3024038? This is an email from Neil Crawford of the 18th of November 2014, and I showed you this morning, and it refers to changes being made to the design of the windows. And he refers there to the need to make a planning application. And he asks you whether you've any issues with general operation. You can see that. What did you understand at that time to be the proposed changes to the windows?
I can't recall, sorry.
Did you appreciate that by reducing the size of the windows and moving them out to sit in the cladding line, that would produce a gap where fire could break out of a flat and into the cladding?
As I say, my understanding was that there was a framework attached to the existing structure that would act as a support and a cavity barrier to the window.
But this is the reference you made to a steel
Yeah.
barrier this morning,
Yes.
is it? I see. Can I ask you to look at paragraph 21 of your first statement on page 3? And at paragraph 21, you say, in answer to the question, what elements or aspects of the interior of the building at the time of the fire failed to comply with what elements or aspects of what regulations, etc., you say, as far as I can tell now, the windows were not fitted in accordance with the building regulations. They were not compliant as it appeared the fire barriers were not installed correctly and the fire stopping hadn't been sealed correctly. Are you referring only to the cavity barriers around the windows here?
Well, sorry.
When you say the fire barriers were not installed correctly, what fire barriers are you talking about there?
The angle.
The angle of what?
The angle supporting the windows.
Is that what you mean by fire barrier?
Yes.
I see.
Obviously, if there was any tolerances that they would be filled up with appropriate materials, because it goes on to say in the regulations how they should be, describes how cavity barriers should be fitted.
Are you referring to anything else there, do you think, in terms of non-compliance? Or are you just saying that that angle, as you call it, was not installed correctly?
Sorry, bear with me for a moment, please.
Yes, of course.
Elements or aspects of it. Well, again, the question, I haven't answered it fully when I've been answering that question. It would appear, because it says what aspects of the interior. As I said, I don't know what other aspects of the interior, whether the doors weren't, or the new doors weren't, when the fire occurred, weren't effectively self-closing. As far as when I did my final inspection, the doors were fire-resisting doors. The smoke stopping that I saw was, the fire stopping that I saw in my inspections were okay. We could be talking about whether the mechanical ventilation system didn't work properly on the evening.
Just focusing on windows, can we go to paragraph 33 of your second statement?
Yeah.
And I'd like to look at page 9, which is the question you're asked at the foot of that page.
Right.
Under E, did you ever raise concerns about the compliance of the windows at any stage during the project? And if you turn to the top of page 10, page 10, you can see your answer. You say possibly.
Yeah.
During site visits, I would make physical noted in my A3 notebook and raise any concerns with the site manager or the person escorting me. I have been informed RBKC cannot locate my notebook. And then if you look at F, which is the question, did you inspect the fitting of the windows during the project? If so, what did you observe? No, you say, I may have seen parts of the fitting process, but I did not inspect the actual fitting of the windows in its entirety. Is it more likely that you didn't inspect the windows on site at all?
I did.
How could you have raised questions of compliance of the windows if you didn't inspect their actual fitting in their entirety?
Well, the areas I saw were okay from what I saw.
But if you don't see the whole of the fitting,
Yeah.
and just rely on bits of
Well,
it, how can you be satisfied in your mind that it's compliant with the building?
As I say, as part of the process, when doing your job, you're not a resident clerk of works. You're coming in and looking at a particular stage of the work, and you're making a judgment at that particular time, and you've got to take into consideration the standard of work going on elsewhere in the building.
Indeed. But my question really is, why weren't you approaching this on the basis that you needed to see precisely what was going into the windows by way of materials and design, and making sure that each and every element...
I went in from time to time, and what I saw was satisfactory.
But if you were going in from time to time, you were going to miss things that might have been unsatisfactory.
Well, I can't be there 24 hours a day, or 7 hours a day. I'm going and doing a visit. I'm spending a certain amount of time looking at the project as in a whole. As I say, I look at all various aspects of the building. You know, what's going on in other parts of the building, and as I say, I can only spend so much time there, and as I say, what I saw at the times were okay.
Why couldn't you have approached it on the basis that you would take a particular window set and ask Ryden or Harley to show you precisely how it was built up, how it was fitted, check it against the drawings, and then do a spot check of the rest of the building to make sure that there were no generic flaws?
I didn't.
I know. And my question is, why didn't you?
But as I say, what I saw at the time when I was going doing my visits, there were no issues as far as I was concerned.
We'll come to site visits in just a moment. Before I leave this question, did you look in the gaps between the new window and the old window where insulation had been installed?
I don't recall.
Did you ever inspect a window or window set from inside the flat, a flat, rather than from outside on the hoist?
I can't recall.
One or two questions on the crown. We've seen one or two drawings of the crown that I showed you earlier. Did you ever ask for full details of the design of the crown?
I saw drawings of the crown and I inspected the crown.
Did you appreciate at the time that the crown could have been a mechanism for external fire spread?
As I said in my previously, there was, in my view, no requirement for additional cavity barriers under approved document B.
Did you ever actually inspect the crown on site?
I did, and I did with Paul Hanson.
And did you note what it was comprised of?
Yes.
ACM panels with a PE core.
Well, as I say, ACM panels.
Did you and Paul Hanson, when you inspected it, have a conversation about what the panels were made of at the crown?
I don't recall.
Right.
If I may, that was a meeting that Paul and I attended at the request of Simon Lawrence, because there was an additional power cable being installed in the building and he wanted our advice on that. So we did a full inspection of the building on that particular day.
Right.
And as I say, we went up to the roof and we looked at that.
You did. Would you remember when, roughly?
As I say, it was the time when they were putting or about to put an additional power cable in the core.
Right. And you say you inspected the entirety of...
Or we walked the building. We looked round the lower levels. We went up and looked at the lobbies at various levels, and we went up and looked at the crown, as I say.
Well, we may come to that in the course of your evidence about the site visits, to which I now want to turn, if I can, as a new topic. Can we turn first to your first witness statement at page 9 and look at paragraph 84? And you say at page 84, inspections were carried out by myself, Paul Hanson, John Allen, Parvinder Verdi. Also in August/September 2015, I was absent following an operation, and I was informed by the project manager that one of my colleagues visited the site in my absence. Just on that, I think it's right that you came back from leave on the 8th of October 2015. I think you say that elsewhere.
Well, I had an operation, as I say, in August, and I was off for some time.
Yes.
And then I had some leave in September, and I also had some leave in October.
Yeah, but I think you came back in early October.
No, I came in between.
Okay. Now, looking at what's said there, because you mentioned your operation,
Yeah.
how was it decided which of the building control officers would undertake individual inspections, just generally?
Phone call would come in for a request for a visit, and either I believe John Allen may have allocated, but if he wasn't there, it may have been Jose Anon.
I see.
So,
I see. And what system did you have in place generally in RBKC's building control department to ensure that you communicated effectively amongst yourselves about those visits?
Well, when I went to a job for somebody else, I would inform them and put the note in Accolade.
In Accolade.
But I would also inform somebody that I'd been to their site. But I don't know whether there was any actual written policy as regards that.
If you turn to page 11 of your first statement and look at paragraph 101, I'm sorry, it's page 10 actually, at the bottom first of all, you say, following such inspections, if my conclusions recommendation were of a minor nature and I was confident that the builders would deal with the matters I raised, my concerns would simply be noted in my notebook and recorded on Accolade accordingly. And if you go over the page now, please, to page 11, at paragraph 102, you say, if my concerns were serious, in addition to the above, I would return to check that my recommendations had been implemented. If they had not, then I would escalate it to my line manager and take according action, which could include serving formal notice to correct the works.
Yes.
Can you give us an example of what you would consider to be a serious matter? Or a serious concern?
All right. I had a project where they hadn't put the drains in correctly and covered over the drains, and I could see that they had been done incorrectly. They also did put the staircase in correctly, and they put some steelwork in incorrectly. Now, with that, I actually met the owner of the property, and we went through all the issues, and they agreed to open up informally and correct these issues, or they were in the process of correcting these issues before I left.
On the Grenfell Tower, sorry.
Sorry.
I'm so-
Another
go on.
example would be if I saw people doing dangerous work practices, and I would, excavating unsupported, carrying out excavations without supporting, putting temporary works in properly. I would call the office and get one of the dangerous structures surveyors to go and look at it accordingly.
Yeah, thank you. On the Grenfell Tower project, do you recall having any serious concerns that required you to return to check that your recommendations had been implemented, as you would put it?
There was at the end. I did a number of visits. I did a letter with writing what I saw at that time. I would as regards fire stopping, that I could see exposed, for example, in the cupboards, in the cores, and say making good in petitions. I could see those at my next visit. So they were minor matters, but I could, or obviously important matters, but I could see that they had been done. I don't recall ever escalating anything on Grenfell.
Now, going back to this question of mock-ups that we talked about just a little bit earlier on this afternoon, Mr. Berry, Graham Berry of Osborne Berry, gave evidence on day 41 that somebody from building control had seen a mock-up that they had done showing where the cavity barriers were to go. And our reference to that is day 41, page 45, at line 8 to 46, line 10. Now, I think you said you never saw such a mock-up. Is that right?
Correct. I don't know who went in my place.
Right. He also said, and this is day 41, page 55, 9 to 19, that there were occasions when work was left uncovered and could have been inspected. Do you agree with that from what you saw?
No, not from what I saw.
How will you be able to check for compliance of the insulation with the building regulations, both in terms of the product being used and design and installation, if it had been covered up by the rain screen panels when you inspected?
I saw certain aspects when I visited.
You did?
Yes.
You say certain aspects.
I saw the installation. As I say, they would go down and they would. As I say, I could see what they were using at the time when I visited.
Were you ever offered the opportunity to undertake a site visit while the wiring and pipe work and fire stopping and cavity barriers and insulation, or any of those, were still exposed?
Well, it was an ongoing process, and I would see those when I came in.
Right. So it would depend very much on what you saw on the day, I think is what you're saying. So.
Yes. We did ask for, obviously we witnessed tests on various services. We called in specifically to witness tests on various services. As I say, I mentioned about the visit where they called us specifically in to look at this additional cable.
Do you remember whether Osborne Berry took you up the building in the mast climber to see what had been installed before the cladding panels were installed?
I would, as I say, the point of contact would be the office,
yes.
The Ryden's office, because they're the principal contractor.
The reason I ask is that Ben Bailey, in his statement of paragraph 13, for the reference HAR 3010060 at page 5, no need to have it up, says that Osborne Berry took you up the building to see what had been installed before the cladding panels went on.
No, that's
you
not.
Say that's wrong.
As I say, there was a procedure where I would go in, sign in, and go to the office.
Right.
And then a Rydens person would escort me round the building.
Did you ever make a visit to site where Osborne Berry accompanied you or attended your visit?
There were workmen there, but and there was a gentleman. I think his name was Taff, but as a who may have been there when I was with Ryden.
Right. Taff is Mark Osborne.
Is he? Oh, right.
You remember someone called Taff?
Yes.
Did you go round the building with Taff?
No, I would go round the building with
Right.
a Ryden person.
Did you discuss the cladding works with anyone from the Clerk of Works, such as, for example, John White?
I met him on 2 occasions. I met him on 3 occasions, actually. First time when I was introduced to him. A second time I did a joint inspection on the mast climber, which I can't remember the date. And then on the 12th of January 2016, there was the graduate who had joined us. We did a joint inspection that day with him. We didn't do the inside of the building, but we met him at the mast climber, and we went with it may have been, and I can't be absolutely certain, David Hughes, but there was certainly a Ryden's representative and the Clerk of Works.
Yes. Was the Clerk of Works present more than on 3 occasions during your site inspections? Or just the 3 that you can recall?
That's the only time I actually recall seeing him. But obviously, he had a role where he was there on all day on certain days.
What did you understand the scope of his role to be?
I thought he were all a resident Clerk of Works.
Performing a traditional Clerk of Works role, or performing something different?
No, traditional Clerk of Works.
Did anybody ever tell you that he was only there as the eyes and ears of the TMO?
No, that's not the case.
I just want to ask you 1 or 2 questions
Sorry,
about...
had you finished? Sounds as though you want to say a bit more.
No, as I say, it was my understanding that there was another Clerk of Works there as well, dealing with services. There were 2 Clerk of Works.
Yeah. I just want to ask you 1 or 2 questions about the record of your inspections before we turn to the inspections themselves. Now, can we go to your second statement at page 20, please, and look at paragraph 51B? And you say there, in answer to the question, please describe how any information was recorded and disseminated in practice. You say, my understanding is that we were expected to place all site notes on Accolade. In practice, this did not occur. In respect of how I worked, I would make notes in my notebook, my Outlook calendar, and sometimes on Accolade. When you refer to an expectation that a building control officer would place all notes on Accolade, whose expectation was that?
Well, it's my expectation in the office.
How was that expectation communicated? Was there a written policy or statement or guidance or something like that?
I don't know whether there was any written policy note on, or I don't recall them. As I say, there was back in, I think, 2006. John Jackson did a document in response to the performance standards.
Yes. I think it's a yes or no. Was there a written policy or guidance, as to putting site notes onto Accolade?
If it was, it would have been that document.
Okay.
I don't recall any other policy. May I just say that I did request copies of all policy documents from the council, and as I say, I wasn't
Yeah.
given access to or I was given access to certain documents.
Well, I think the council would say, or they would ask me to say that they had given all disclosure of all relevant documents in their possession, for the record, to make that clear.
Yeah.
But can I then ask you a question? You say in practice this did not occur. In other words, placing all site notes on Accolade. My question is, why did you not adhere to the policy in practice?
Well, I did, but on looking at going back through my records, there are some notes missing.
Why is that?
I can't explain. It's not consistent with the way I did my work.
Would you accept that without a comprehensive record of site visits, it wouldn't be possible for anybody to verify what was done in the course of considering a building control application?
Yeah.
Can we then turn to frequency of expectations? You've already told us, I think, that you decided to do one once a month. Can I go to Mr. Hughes's witness statement? He was riding at RYD 30s94213. And I want to show you page 12, please, at paragraph 61.1. And he summarises his interaction with building control, and he starts in that subparagraph by saying, on 30th of October 2015 was my first contact with RBKC Building Control when I requested a site visit from John Hoban on 2nd of November 2015. So Steve and I, that's Steve Blake, could discuss the project with him. And then if you go over the page to paragraph 61.2, he says, I requested that John Hoban visit site to inspect the cladding on 11th November 2015 to discuss what he required to see it signed off. And he says we went up the west and north elevations. Then if you go over the page again, please, to paragraph 61.5, this is at a later stage again. He says, I arranged for John Hoban to visit the site on 12th of January 2016 at 9 a.m. to go up the mast climbers again. And then at the bottom of that page, in paragraph 61.8, he says, I requested a visit by John Hoban, following which he attended site on 12th of May 2016 and walked around the lower 4 floors. He's identified 4 occasions in his evidence on which he asked you to make a visit. Was it common practice for your visits to arise as a result of a request from the contractor rather than a proactive decision yourself to inspect the site?
I would have... we had what was known as site inspection reports. So it would come up when you'd done your last visits, and we would go through that and use that as an aid to prompt us to visit. But sometimes that was unreliable because for some unknown reason, jobs would not show up on those site inspection reports, and I would have monthly meetings with John Allen, and we would go through my job sheets.
How do you account for the fact that at least 4 of these visits to Grenfell Tower arose as a result of your being asked to attend by Ryden, as opposed to going along voluntarily?
Well, I knew they were due. He kept. I would have gone myself, but he called me.
Can you look at RBK 30s44888? This looks as if it's...
If I may, sorry, if we go back, as I say, there was a time when John Allen went in my absence. In March, I wasn't available.
March 16.
Yes. So there was March.
Yeah. Can we go to RBK 30s44888, please? and this is from you. It looks like an Outlook entry. It's a strange document because it looks like an email from you, but it bears David Hughes's legend and details at the bottom. Can you explain this document?
No, I think it's obviously it's a prompt for me to visit. We had a process in the office where we would put our visits on in our Outlook calendar, and there was also we had some spreadsheets that were shared amongst the surveyors, so that we could actually see where people were on a particular day, and if somebody wasn't in for some unknown reason, we would have access to the list of visits that they had, and those visits could be picked up.
I see. How did you arrange visits in practice with Ryden? Did you send a calendar invite to them, or an email, or a phone call? How was it done in general?
Could be a phone call.
Right.
I don't know whether I sent emails as well.
Now I want to turn to. I'm so sorry.
No,
do you want to?
No, sorry.
That's okay. Do you want to finish the answer? Is there anything else you want to tell us?
As I say, it was a site that you couldn't just walk into. There's a number of sites like that.
Yeah.
An appointment would have to be made.
Yes.
And as I say, because you needed somebody to walk around, there needed to be one of Ryden's staff to accompany you
Yes.
on the site. It wasn't like you could walk in off the street.
Oh, no, I understand that. I just wondered how it was that the contact was made.
Yeah.
I want to ask you some questions about some of the specific site inspections you made. I just want to be clear. I'm not going to ask you about every single one. We have the Clerk of Works reports and we have Ryden's progress reports to tell us when they occurred and some of the content about it. So I'm going to try and take this economically if I can. I want to set it in some context chronologically too. We've already discussed your site visits in 2014, and I think we've got your pre-start visit on the 29th of August, your visit on the 29th of September 2014. We discussed your site meeting on the 24th of November 2014, and there was, according to Accolade, a further site visit on the 27th of November 2014, and I mentioned those to get the chronology straight. There is a meeting then on the 16th of January 2015, and we can get that from JRP 60168 at page 2. And this is a Clerk of Works site inspection report dated 4th of February 2015. That's JRP 60168. And if we can go to page 1, we can get the date. This is the 4th of February 2015. It's report number 3. And they're all in the same format, I should just say, but the inspection date is set out there in each of them, the top right-hand corner. And if we can go to page 2, you can see under Review Site Inspection Log Building Control, last building control site visit was Friday, 16th January 2015, and commented on the fireproofing, the sockets, putty pads, or similar to the party walls, and the fireproofing and acoustic details in the partitions. Sorry, that's partition walls, and the fireproofing and acoustic details in the partitions. These will be inspected when work is carried out. Was that you who conducted that visit, do you think?
I can't be certain.
The reason I ask is that there's no record of this visit in Accolade. Are you able to explain that?
As I say, it may be that it didn't take my note. As I mentioned, some of my notes are not there.
Yes, I know. And is this one of them?
It may be.
Okay. Then if we turn on to the next meeting, this is JRP 50169, please. Page 1 to start with. This is the inspection date, 17th of February. And if we go to page 2, we can see again under site review log, building control. You can see there, it says, last building control site visit was Tuesday, 17th of February, 17th February, and it's 2015, with no issues. Again, do you recall that visit?
I can't recall at this stage.
And the reason I ask is your accolade notes don't have any records of visits between November 2014 and May 2015. And again, do you know why that's not in there?
As I say, I know I did visits,
Right.
and as I say, I don't know why. It's not consistent with the way I would normally work.
Well, let's move on then to the spring of 2015, and I want to ask you about meetings or site visits on the 7th or 15th of May 2015. And if we start with RYD 3041667, please. This is Ryden's progress report number 11, reporting on the progress period 17th of April 15 to the 15th of May 2015. Can we look at page 12? Item 7, building control. Do you see? It says, building control were on site on Friday 15th May to inspect the top 3 floors for insulation, fire break and window installation on 3 elevation. Did you undertake those inspections on the 15th of May?
I can't recall, sorry.
You don't remember, therefore, what procedure was followed for the inspection of the windows at that inspection? Nor whether the inspections would have included the window trim or something like that? No.
This was May. May
15.
May 15. I don't know whether, as I say, there was a stage in April where I got another area from John Allen to look at the to look after, and there was a time where I did I didn't. There was a gap in order that I deal with those particular jobs before going into hospital and having an operation. So I was given, as I say, approximately 50, I think it was about 55 jobs. And I felt that it was a priority to go round and look at those particular jobs to find out what stage they were. I didn't have, as I say, any major major concerns, and there was two clerk of works on the job, and there was a number of levels of supervision on site. As I say, there was Ryden's own guys, and then obviously the subcontractors, foreman, and as I say, two clerk of works. So, sort of my main priority at that stage was obviously dealing with this new area that I was dealing with, and jobs where things were not going right, and could escalate into major problems.
I understand about your workload.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to explain is how I prioritised at that particular time.
I understand.
When making judgments when to visit.
Yes, I understand.
Yeah.
In your last answer just now, you said that you had no major concerns and there were two clerks of works on the site, as well as Ryden's own guys and subcontractors foreman. Does that tell us that you were relying on them to get it right?
No,
because they're not building control.
No, I'm not relying on them to do my job, but I have to prioritise where I visit, and I can only do so many visits in a day and a week, and as I say, I have to look and prioritise where I need to go.
Did you not say to John Allen, look, I'm overstretched, I can't do all these jobs properly,
I did.
I've got to give most of my attention to this specialist complex project?
I did ask for help in, I think it was April 2015, because when he gave me the new area, I felt that I was being or that I was struggling with my workload. I made a number of suggestions about what we should do with Celia's area and the work in there, and none of those suggestions were taken up, and I felt I was in a position that I couldn't refuse. I was instructed to deal with that additional area, and I had to take it on.
Are you sure in your own mind that those managing you knew clearly what the difficulties were that you were going through?
Yes. You know, as I say, I had health issues going on, which sometimes I had to go home early from work, or because I was unwell. I was going to various hospital appointments. Which obviously I let my manager know. I mentioned to him about my high blood pressure on a couple of occasions. As I say, I told him about this, but I felt I was in a position. I felt I was unable to say no to him.
Really? Were there no facilities or resources offered to you or provided to you to support you, to make sure that you could do your building control job on Grenfell to the best of your ability?
As I said, I pointed this out to. I felt I couldn't escalate it any further. I just felt that I had to do that. I did say on a number of occasions in the office that we needed more staff. I felt that we were under-resourced. As I say, we lost 6 people in September 2013, when 5 of my colleagues retired and Michael Wynne passed away. And then subsequently, Hilary Wyatt left, or not left, she went into the planning department, and I got her area. And then, as I say, and then I got Celia's area in the April, and I was told I was in a better position than my colleagues to deal with that. And I was coming in at weekends to try and keep on top of my work. I used to go to bed at night with a notebook, thinking about about jobs, and some nights I wasn't sleeping at all.
You said that you didn't feel you could escalate it further, or didn't feel you could say no.
No.
Why couldn't you do that?
That's what I felt. The decision in the past, decisions were made by managers, and they made the decisions. We weren't brought in to discuss those proposals. It was, this is what you're doing.
So there was no means, was there a means of escalating it to somebody higher up the management chain?
I felt I couldn't do that.
I just want to understand why you felt that. Was it a culture in the department, or
yes,
or just a natural diffidence on your part?
No, I felt it was a, it was a culture within the department.
Coming back to the site visits themselves, can I ask you to look at ART 404173, please? And I'd like us to have up pages 3 and 4 of that document together so we can look at item 5.1 at the bottom of that page. I should just say this is the note of progress meeting number 11 on site on the 19th of May 2015. And if we look at the bottom of page 3, 5.1, under health and safety, building control visited site on the 15th of May to inspect the top 3 floors for insulation, fire break and window installation on 3 elevations, and had no adverse comments. You see that? Now, just noting that, can I ask you to go to JRP 50160, please? This is JRP's inspection report, with the inspection date is the 12th of May 2015. And if we go to page 2, under the building control section, it reads, last building control site. Can you see that? Last building control site visit was Friday, 15th of May 2015. The only observation was that further details of the cladding fire breaks were required, riding to confirm if they have done this. What were the further details of the cladding fire breaks required?
I think I was asking for further information for our records.
Further information about what?
Well, I got limited information from them.
Limited on what? What was it about the cladding fire breaks which you needed further details of?
Well, they as I say. I can't be certain, but as I say, obviously I've asked for information. As I say, I was asking for information to be.
Right. Did you get further information that you asked for?
Some I did, some I didn't.
Right. We saw just now the Ryden note that you had no adverse comments, and yet here we see the building control section of the JRP report saying that you had further. You wanted further details.
Well, as regards that, the location of the breaks, as you know.
Is that what it was about?
Yes.
Right.
Well, that's what I believed to be at the time.
I see. Can we go back to your second witness statement at page 10, please, and just pick up a point we looked at, I think, earlier, at paragraph 33F, where you were asked, did you inspect the fitting of the windows? We saw this before. You said, no, I may have seen parts of the fitting process, but I did not inspect the actual fitting of the windows in its entirety.
Yeah.
Now, that's a general answer to a general question.
Yeah.
At this point in time, so May 2015, did you have the opportunity at that point to inspect the windows on this visit, 15th of May 15?
I can't recall.
Right.
Sorry.
Is there a reason why you might not have undertaken a more detailed inspection at that time?
As I say, I went and I recorded what I saw, but as I say, there was nothing that stood out at the time. Again, I would, I say, go to site. I may have, I don't know how how many visits to do. So I would spend, the time.
Do you accept that you yourself had an opportunity at that stage to intervene and stop any poor design of the window or manner of installation?
I didn't see that at the time.
You didn't see it, right? Did you, on that inspection, compare what you were seeing in relation to the windows and the fire breaks, as you call them, with the drawings, and double check that what was being installed at that stage was in accordance with the
wouldn't
drawings you
physically
had?
take the drawings up onto the climber with me. As I say, I would see that they were installed, or the ones that I saw were at the appropriate level.
The compartment floors and walls, I think you said.
Yeah, and as I say, they had at the columns at various points. They were working on those.
Right. Can we go to an email, RYD30899251, please? This is an email from Danny Osgood of Ryden, 19th of June 2015, to Simon O'Connor of Ryden. Simon, all queries concerning firebreak were addressed and closed out. Building control have stated they do not need to return and will until we begin to hang panels. Did you say that? Did you tell Danny Osgood?
I actually, I don't recall ever meeting or seeing Danny Osgood on site.
Did you tell anyone at Ryden that building control don't need to return until they begin to hang panels?
No.
How can you account for that email?
That's what that's what he's told his manager, but that is not the case. As I say,
Right.
I don't actually recall ever meeting the gentleman.
Right. Mr. Osgood was asked about this conversation on day 30 at page 152, line 16, and he said that it could well have been you that told him that building control didn't need to return until hanging of the panels began.
No, that's not the case. As I say, I don't.
All right.
I don't ever recall meeting the gentleman on site.
Moving on to the 17th of August 2015, our records indicate that there was no building control inspection at all in the period June and July 2015.
Correct.
And was there a decision that none should take place?
Pardon?
Was there a positive decision that there should be no building control visits in those 2 months?
As I say, I was dealing with the new area that I was given. I needed to establish what was going on those particular jobs, plus the new work that was coming in, and where there were problem issues on site that I deal with them. So it was a question of prioritising my work at that time. As I say, from my previous visits to the job, I didn't see anything that I considered an escalation. As I say, I'd worked with a lot of these people before, or the consultants on the job before. It had a project manager. It had 2 clerk of works. On lots of my jobs, there was no form of supervision or project manager. The workmanship could be of a very poor standard. There could be, I could go on site and there'd be no drawings on site, or they were doing things in a dangerous manner. So those I considered to be a higher priority at that stage.
Are you saying that because Grenfell Tower, to your understanding, had a team of experienced professionals, you were less ruthless and rigorous than you would have been if they'd not been there?
No. Well, I have to make. I can only do so much in a day, Mr. Millett, and I have to prioritise my work.
Yes.
And as I say, I have to, make judgments. If I had more time and I had less work, I could have spent more time on my other jobs. I had, I don't know, that time, maybe 120, 130 jobs to,
Yeah.
Every job has got, got different challenges.
Yes, I understand that. But by my question, I was simply seeking to understand the rationale for the prioritisation. And I think you're telling us that you prioritise these other jobs over Grenfell because of the presence of people whom you thought were experienced professionals.
No. That was one consideration. As I say, the other consideration was what I'd seen before on site.
Now, here we have a period of 3 months that goes by, from the 15th of May until the 17th of August.
Yes.
During which time,
May,
you want to interrupt me? Yes.
if I may,
Please.
I believe Jose Anon went in my absence.
Right. Do you know when?
I don't, because his note's not there. I believe he was called in my absence. Also, Pavinder Verdi was called in on a dangerous structure at some stage. He was called out by one weekend, I believe, by either the council or the police to look at the cladding because a report went in.
Now, did you have a discussion with Jose Anon about his site visit that you can now recall when you, or before you, made your site visit in the August of 2015?
As I say, I know he went to site, and as I say, he told me that he'd been to site at some stage, and Pavinder Verdi also told me that he'd been called.
My question is whether you had a discussion with Mr. Anon about his site visit, so that you could then, when you came back to it in the August of 2015, could understand what it is he'd seen and decided
I think
on.
he just told me. As I say, I shouldn't speculate.
All right.
Sorry.
Now, I think you were off in September
Yes.
2015. Do you think it was Jose Anon who attended in September 2015?
I couldn't tell you.
Right. Now, because you deal with this in your statement at paragraph 84, can I just ask you to look, please, at RYD 3055130. This is a photograph which was taken in October 2015. And we can see, if we look at it, that on the left-hand side, there are some insulation panels with Kingspan branding on it. We may need to blow that up a little bit, but you can actually see Kingspan branding. Do you remember seeing Kingspan branding from your visits in the autumn of 2015?
No, I don't recall seeing those.
Did you know that Kingspan insulation panels had been fitted to this building?
Not at the time, or up to when I cleared the job, no.
Did nobody from Meraiden or Harley or Studio E tell you that in lieu of Celotex panels, RS5000 panels, some Kingspan Cooltherm K15 panels had been ordered and put on the building?
No.
If you had known or seen that, what would you have done, do you think?
I would have gone and looked at the BBA certificate.
Right. Can we then go to November 2015 and look at RBK 3052478 at page 4, please? At page 4, this is a note of your site visit on the 2nd of November 2015, cladding inspection and meeting with new project manager. You see that?
Yeah.
Who was the new project manager that you met?
I believe it was David Hughes.
David Hughes, yes. And what did your cladding inspection involve? Do you remember?
I don't think I think I may have just popped in that particular day. He may have phoned me to introduce himself to me.
Right.
And I may have had unable to actually do of it, as I say, without. I mentioned about my visits in the past. I haven't had access to those. As I say, there are spreadsheets, I believe, whether they've been retained, that would show everybody's visits on those particular days. So, as I say, it may give an indication of how many visits I was doing on that particular day.
Let's go to RBK 30107882, please.
Mr. Millett, are we going to have a break for?
Yes, we could. We could take one now, or we could get to the next site inspection.
Well, have you got a few more site inspections to
I
do?
have, yes.
So,
It'd be sensible to finish this one off before moving on to the next
yes,
inspection.
all right, well, finish this one and then I think we ought to.
I'll keep it as short as I can. RBK 30107882. This looks like a message sent to yourself on the 2nd of November. It looks like a diary note of some kind. It says, visited site, met site manager and Harley representative, went up on hoist to look at new cladding on eastern and western elevations, 90% of cladding on main elevations complete, columns 50% complete, seen horizontal side arise cavity barriers where panels are to be fixed just after hoist is taken down, minor repairs, etc. Subcontractor is aware of matter and scheduled to carry out and make good. Works progressing steadily, no adverse comments to make. And then there are some 16 exclamation marks.
I may have.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
can I just ask the question rather than just leaving you to comment at large? First of all, who was the Harley representative that you met on site?
I'll explain why people weren't named in our notes. We were instructed some years previously that we weren't to put the names of the people that we actually met in our site notes. It was something to do with data protection issues, because originally when I started in the District Surveyor Service, I would always put the name of the person and their title, what their actual involvement, whether it be the architect, the owner, or the building contractor.
I'm going to cut you off, Mr. Hoban. I'm sorry, because time is getting short, and I just want an answer to the question, if you can remember. Who was the Harley representative? You can tell us.
I can't.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, you can't. And when you say you went up the hoist to look at new cladding, do you know what that inspection entailed? Can you remember?
May have been to look at the actual panels, see if panels were damaged and whether any windows were damaged. As I say, there would be a section that would be exposed where the mast climber was,
Right.
and that refers to the side-rise cavity.
Now, you put 16 exclamation marks at the end of the message. What did that?
I think I may have. You know, when you're working on a computer, sometimes you put your hand and that.
Right.
that.
Now, in his oral evidence to the inquiry, day 30, page 153 at line 3, Mr. Osgood said that he recalled a discussion with you on site about cavity barriers, and said that the conversation contained something to the gist, to the effect of how good an install it was. Was it your view that the standard of the cavity barrier installation was remarkably good?
No, it would be just whether it was.
Did you?
As I say, I don't believe I would have said that.
Did you say anything to Mr. Osgood about the quality of the installation?
Not that I recall. As I say, I don't actually recall ever for meeting him. Whether he was there that day, as I say, my usual point of contact was, as I say, it was Jason and Jack at the start, and then when David Hughes came on, he usually accompanied me.
Right. Mr. Chairman, is that a convenient
Good point. Yes, I think we'll have a break now.
All right, thank you.
Yes, so Mr. Hoban, we'll stop now. Come back at 20 to 4, please, and don't discuss your evidence with anyone.
Right, thank you.
Over the break. Thank you very much. Twenty to 4, please. Yes, would you ask Mr. Hoban to come back, please?
Pardon me.
Right, Mr. Hoban.
Yes.
Ready to carry on?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Millett?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hoban, I'd like to move forward in time to the 7th of January 2016.
Yes.
And I'd like to go to Mr. Hughes' statement, please, at RYD 3094213 at page 13. And I'd like us to look together at paragraph 61.4. He says in 61.4, Steve Blake and I had a meeting on site with the two senior building control surveyors, John Hoban and Paul Hanson, fire regulations, on 7th of January 2016. Also in attendance was Neil Crawford, the architect from Studio E. Do you recall that meeting?
I don't recall it, but I've seen minutes from a meeting.
He goes on, the purpose of the meeting was to discuss what would be required to achieve building control completion prior to handover to the client. We initially met in the site office for the first part of the meeting and then walked the relevant parts of the building. Now, Mr. Crawford also says that that meeting was also to discuss BC sign-off. And I just put in the reference, that's paragraph 251 of his witness statement, SEA 30142275, page 76. Now, do you agree that the purpose of that meeting was to discuss what would be required to achieve building control completion?
Yeah, we talked about further visits, and we also talked about so I'd be guessing. As I say, it was to talk about sign off.
Right. There is a minute of the meeting
Yeah.
to which Mr. Hughes refers, as you can see. We're going to go to that in a moment. But perhaps it might be quicker to do that. But before I do you remember walking round the relevant parts of the building with Steve Blake, Paul Hanson and Neil Crawford?
My memory, as I say, I know there was minutes that would confirm that Paul and I were there.
Right.
I can't recall it from memory.
You see, if that was the purpose of the meeting, it would have been an important meeting, and therefore an important meeting to have a note of on accolade.
Yeah.
Yes. Let's go to the note then. It's TMO 100172227, and this is Ryden's minutes of the meeting with building control. It's got no date on it, but you are on the distribution list of that meeting. Can you see distribution?
Yes.
All those above, and you are one of those present.
Yeah.
Hughes, Blake, Hoban, Hanson and Crawford. Do you remember looking at this or seeing this document at the time, do you think?
Yeah, I think Paul and I responded to that in an email. And I recall seeing an email that Paul mentioned.
Yes.
He's speaking to me.
You're right. You're right, and we'll come to that.
Yeah.
But looking at this document, take it from me that there's no mention in this document of the cladding or the insulation. Was that discussed at this site visit or not? Do you know?
As I said, I can only go by the minutes of the meeting at that stage.
Right. Now, can we go to your second witness statement and look at pages 9 and 10? Let's have both of those up together if we can. And at bottom of 9, you're asked the question, did you ever raise concerns about the compliance of the windows at any stage during the project? We looked at this before, and over the top at page 10, we could see your answer possibly. During site visits, I would have made physical notes, etc. We saw that before. And then you say, additionally, email from David Hughes on 12th of January 2016 at 16:20 states that raised the issue of fire stopping during a site visit. This could relate to the windows, but without sight of my notes, I cannot be sure. Now, that's what you say in your statement. Let's now look at the email. It's RYD 3063791. And it's an email from David Hughes of the 12th of January 2016, as you say, and it follows a site visit. So it says, hi John, following your visit to site and our discussions, your only comment on the minutes was that there was no mention of fire stopping to penetrations through walls and floors. Please could you confirm that this is correct? Now, the email below it was his email to you and Paul Hansen, as you can see, of the 8th of January, asking you and Paul Hansen for confirmation that the minutes were accurate. Do you remember whether you discussed that email, 8th of January, and the attached minutes with Paul Hansen when you received them?
I believe so, and the reason for that is that Paul answered that.
He does, and he does that on the 13th of January, you're right, and we'll come to that in a moment. But let me just take it in stages. In response to David Hughes' 12th of January email, did you have any comment, or rather, had you made any comment during the visit about fire stopping to penetrations through walls and floors? Do you remember?
By that email, yes.
I see.
Yeah.
So did you make a comment about that at the meeting, which wasn't recorded in the minutes?
Yes, I believe so, because that was something that we on reflection now, as I say, that was something that wasn't in the minutes, that we highlighted hadn't been included in the minutes.
I see. Okay. And now the reason I'm curious is because David Hughes is asking you on the 12th of January to confirm your comment, and I was wondering how he got to know about your comment. But you say it was an email from Paul Hansen, I think you say.
Yes, I believe Paul and I may have. Again, it's my understanding that Paul and I looked at the minutes and looked at their content and said, "Oh, they haven't mentioned the fire stopping."
Right. Let's look at the email we have, which is RBK 403863. This is an email from Paul Hansen of the 13th of January. There it is. To David Hughes. You see that? And it's copied to you. You're the last person on the copy list.
Yeah.
And it's copied to a cast of thousands. Dear Dave, I have reviewed the minutes and confirmed they are accurate regarding my reference means of escape. In addition, John Hoban, RBKC Building Control, did also mention about fire stopping, particularly above door frames. Now, that's the 13th of January. Yeah. Do you accept that these documents, the email of the 12th and 13th that I'm showing you, suggest that your comments at the 7th of January meeting weren't made in relation to the windows, but only about fire stopping in relation to...
Yes.
Yes.
I fear so.
They were concerned with fire stopping through walls, floors and above door frames, but not windows.
Not windows.
No. Now, we then go back a day in time. RBK 401122. This is an email from you to John Allen, dated the 13th of January 2016. So the same day as the email we've just been looking at. Yeah. But here you're referring to site visits with Cass. Now, Cass is the young gentleman you referred to. I think it was the graduate who had come in to assist. And the subject here is Cass visits with myself 12th January 2016. And there you see five sites which were visited. And the second of those is Grenfell Tower, where you say, checking new external cladding to existing tower block, identifying defects controllable under the building regulations on new panels, brief introduction on fire breaks, fire cavity barriers, including location of where cavity barriers on cladding panels should be provided for this particular project. What was the purpose of that email?
John Allen had asked me, or asked surveyors, to say what they were taking Kaz out for. As I say, he just joined us in the new year. He was a graduate, and it's the first time he'd been introduced to building control matters.
Right. Were these 5 site visits all on the 12th of January?
On reflection, maybe I put the date wrong on that, because it may have been an earlier date.
Right. I was going to ask you, because looking at this, it looks as if there was a site visit with Kaz on the 12th of January, as well as the visit you'd paid on the 7th of January, as we've seen before.
Yeah.
Do you think that's wrong?
Yeah, I think it could have been.
Right. So could this have been a reference to what had been discussed at the 7th of January meeting? 5 days
when I
before?
went with Kaz, as I say, I was the two of us, and as I say, Mr. Allen, all the surveyors that were left were taking Kaz out on different days.
Yes. Do you remember when it was that you visited with Kaz and checked the things you say here you checked?
That will be reflected in the spreadsheets that I mentioned. I can't. It was early January.
Right. So would it have been the 7th of January, even though he wasn't on the circulation list of the note we saw?
I can't be certain.
All right. If that is right, then is this a reliable record of what was checked at the 7th of January meeting by you in accompaniment with Kaz?
These are the things that I looked on with Kaz on a particular day. And as I say, the only way we can check that is
right
against those spreadsheets.
What qualifications did Kaz have to undertake inspections?
He came as a graduate. He'd finished a degree in building surveying, I believe, the June before, and he had some work experience. So he got taken on as a building control surveyor. But this was the first time he was working as a building control surveyor. So I was introducing him to what the job was. As I say, for example, Portobello Road is an opening. So got the drawing out, measured the timber work.
Yes. Now you say in this that you gave a brief introduction on fire breaks, fire cavity barriers, including location of where cavity barriers on cladding panels should be provided for this particular project. What did your brief introduction of fire breaks, fire cavity barriers comprise?
It would be just talking about the approved document.
I see. Did you?
And where they should be, as I say there.
What did you tell him about where they should be?
In accordance with the drawings, not with the drawings, with the approved document.
At this stage, January 2016.
Yeah. Sorry, perhaps I'm not explaining myself correctly. As I say, we were going there, and I said, "Well, this is panels. Oh, these are the panels. We're looking at the finished job." And I said, "Well, there's a barrier at floor level. There's a barrier at the compartment level, and there's a barrier at the window level."
Did you?
We didn't actually. We would have saw perhaps the physical one on where the climber was, but the the rest would have been covered up.
I see. So how could you teach him, as it were, about the location of where cavity barriers on the cladding panel should be if they were all covered up?
It was just a brief introduction. As I say, he had 2 weeks before he'd never been involved, or he may have been involved in making applications to the building control. But he now become a building control officer. So he was. I was taking him out and saying.
Let's move on to March 2016. Can we go to RBK 301070, please? This is an email from John Allen to David Hughes, copied to you on the 24th of March 2016. And he says, David, thank you for your meeting with me today. My overall impression is that you are completing the works to a high standard. Here are the items that I noted this morning in a more legible format. 1, cladding nearly complete. 2, ensure thermal insulation completely fills voids. 3, nursery, no markings on fire-resisting glazing. 4, fire stopping being carried out to a high standard, including in between voids in steel deck, etc. Did you speak to John Allen following his visit on the 24th of March 2016?
I can't recall. I most probably would. I think I wasn't available that day. I had either a hospital appointment for myself or my mother. I wasn't, as I say, I wasn't available. It may have been a medical appointment at my doctor's, but I wasn't available, and he did the visit for me.
Do you have a recollection in general of a discussion, though, about his visit with him, even though I know you weren't there yourself?
As I say, I may have. As I say, I'd be only guessing. As I say, copied me in on it.
Did you take any steps to ensure that the matters identified in his email would be followed up by you at your next visit?
Yes.
What steps were those?
Well, I visited, and then we went through. I did a more. I did another list, I believe, at a later stage.
Right. I think the next visit we have for you is the 4th of May 2016. And is it right that on that date you attended a demonstration of the smoke control system with Paul Hansen?
May have, yes.
Do you remember what your role was at that demonstration?
We went along and we witnessed the operation of the actual system with the closing and the opening of the vents, the operation of the actual air intake, because I believe that some of the windows didn't open on the ground floor. I think we highlighted this in a note to the contractor. So we were witnessing the operation of the actual system itself.
Were you content with the new smoke control system as you saw it demonstrated to you at that visit, or were there still outstanding items that you thought should be fixed?
Well, the windows, as I mentioned, and I mentioned that Paul was waiting for some velocity calculations on the system.
I see.
And
Can we then
the commissioning certificate?
I see. Can we then turn to a meeting on the 12th of May 2016? Go please to RYD 3091475. And I'd like to show you the second email down in that chain. And if you go to that, this is an email from David Hughes to you on that date, 12th of May. Subject, building control, findings from today's visit to Grenfell Tower. You see that? And he says, hi John, thanks for visiting today. To confirm the works that still need to be done. And then he sets out a list. Those all, I think, relate to the lower 4 floors, don't they?
Yeah.
Now, he recalls that his statement, Mr. Hughes, this is 61.8 of his statement, and he says, and I'll rather than take you to it, I'll just tell you what he says. He says, I requested a visit by John Hoban, following which he attended site on 12th of May 2016 and walked around the lower 4 floors. I think I showed you that earlier on this afternoon. Do you recall making a visit to site on the 12th of May 2016?
I believe I did. Did I write an outstanding works letter or a letter of comfort at that stage?
Well, I'm asking you, do you recall making the visit?
Offhand, I can't recall, but
Right.
I believe that I wrote a letter to Rydens.
There's no record of this visit on Accolade.
Yeah.
Do you know why that is?
As I said before, it's I don't know why that note isn't there.
No. And
Yeah.
I'm told that you're correct, that you did write an outstanding works letter
Yeah.
to Ryden, but that doesn't explain the absence of any note
Yeah.
of this meeting on Accolade.
As I say, I didn't put the note in and didn't click the tick box to save.
Right. Now, this was the first visit that you had made since the 15th of March, although we've seen the visit made by Mr. Allen
Yeah.
on the 24th of March, I think it was. Do you know why there was such a long break between those visits? There wasn't one in April, for example.
I'm trying to think what was going on at the time. As I say, it may be that they're, again, as I say, prioritising my visits, as I explained earlier on. There may have been, there may have been certain things going on as regards my particular visits at the time.
Is it fair to assume that you made no inspection of the facade on this visit, 12th of May 16?
I think maybe all that work had been complete at that stage.
Right. Given that the last visit for which we have any reliable documents or notes is your visit on the 12th of January, or perhaps the 7th of January, more accurately, given what you've told us this afternoon, where you did check the external cladding, etc. Can I ask why you didn't use this opportunity, this mid-May visit, to inspect the defects that you'd identified on the earlier visits?
They would have been done. I did, otherwise I would have called them up.
I see. Did you undertake any checks to the cavity barriers on this visit, the mid-May visit?
Internally, yes, but I at this stage, I don't know whether there was any external works for me to look at that stage.
You see, in January, when you went with Cass, it looks as if you'd specifically instructed that the location of the cavity barriers on cladding panels should be provided for this particular project. We saw that.
Well, they would make good as they went down.
Right, but did you check that what you said should be done was done?
I didn't physically come back and check because, as I say, they would do that as they went down.
But you wouldn't then, and then they'd be covered up with rain screen panels,
Yeah.
wouldn't they? So why didn't you in mid-May say, I'd like you to take a couple of panels off so I can check absolutely that what I asked to be done in January has been done?
Well, it wouldn't be possible because the climber, as they take the climber down, they make good.
Indeed, but you as the building control officer could ask them to uncover parts of the work that you hadn't had an opportunity to inspect at that point, couldn't you?
But there'd be no climber there for us to get up.
But that presumably was as a result of not undertaking sufficiently frequent inspections, so that you could still undertake your inspections while the mast climber was still in place.
as I say, the mast, as they take the mast climber, they put the panels on.
So are you saying that it was actually never possible to undertake an inspection of what was underneath a panel once the panel was on?
No.
You are saying that, or you're not saying that?
No. At the end of the project, as I say, they were making good and putting the panels on as they progressed down, and I didn't come back.
I think we're getting at cross purposes.
Yeah.
Would it be right to understand that if you if you'd wanted to, you could have asked them to dismantle panels so that you could look behind them, before they took the mast climbers down at all?
No, they as I say, the mast climber was there. They were making good those.
No, I haven't got to the making good point.
Oh, sorry.
Or striking the mast climbers. I'm just wanting your help on this.
Yeah.
If you'd been told by Ryden, or by Harlan, we're going to start striking the mast climbers in a week or 2 weeks' time, could you at that point have gone along and asked them to remove some individual panels so that you could check behind them? Well, there was still access available.
If I'd come back, yes.
Yeah, but once they start taking the mast climbers down, they make good as they go.
Yeah.
And after that, there's no access to anything.
No, there's not an opportunity.
Right. I thought so.
Yeah. Yeah. So my question again is, why was it that you couldn't do an inspection while the mast climbers were in place before the rain screen cladding covered up the cavity barriers and the insulation and the rails, etc., to make sure that what was going in underneath the rain screen cladding conformed with the building regulations?
As I say, I'm not. I can only spend so much time on a job, as I mentioned previously. I'm not there every day. I have to make judgments on whether I go to this particular job or that particular job where there's problems, and I can see that there are major issues. I didn't see that here, so I'm making judgments on what I consider to be an immediate priority to deal with at a given time.
Yeah.
As I say, I do so many visits a day. I have to do my other works as well. So there's only a certain amount of time I can spend doing inspections.
Yeah. Was there not a time, whether in mid-May 16 or at an earlier time, when on any of these site visits you could see from the mast climbers that they were about to hang a panel over finished insulation and cavity barriers, and say, before you do that, before you cover it up, I just want to check the workmanship and the compliance?
I did.
Do you remember doing that?
Yes.
You did. Can you remember specifically, or even roughly, when you did that?
When I went up on the climbers, they were working on those areas.
Right. Can we then move to June 2016 and go to RBK 30132224, please? Now, this is a letter from Paul Hanson to Ryden, dated the 2nd of June 2016, and it reads...
No, it's from me.
I'm so sorry, it's from you. We'll just turn to the second page of that. It's actually from John Allen.
Yeah.
Sorry, so that's why I asked you. It's from John Allen, not from you. It does say on the first page, please ask for John Hoban, as you can see, but it is actually written by John Allen. And it reads, with reference to a recent site inspection of Grenfell Tower carried out by John Hoban with yourself yesterday afternoon, etc. Now, just pausing there, do you recall a site inspection of Grenfell Tower carried out by you with David Hughes on the 1st of June 2016?
Yeah, I would have done that.
You don't. Can we go to RBK 3052478, please. And go in there to halfway down the page, where you can see 1st of June 2016, and this is your site visit recorded, and it says, site visit today with site manager, outstanding matters listed below, also see council's letter dated 2nd of June 2016, which I've just shown you. With reference to a recent site inspection of Grenfell Tower carried out by John Hoban with yourself yesterday afternoon, and then what's set out below is essentially a cut and paste of the letter which John Allen had written to John.
I wrote that letter.
You wrote the letter.
Yes.
John Allen signed it, and you were the asked-for person. It's right, isn't it, that this is simply a cut and paste of that letter?
Yes.
Did you actually make any notes during your inspection?
Yes, and in order to construct that
follow.
letter.
Right, so the letter was based on your notes.
Yes.
And if we look above that entry, we then can see that there's an entry for the 7th of July 2016, works controllable under the building regulations, now complete, cleared job. Does that tell us that you, by then, had satisfied yourself that all outstanding works had been completed so far as building
I went back.
building control was concerned?
I went back.
You went back.
As I say, I was dealing with family matters at the time, and I was in and out of the office.
Right.
So that's not a complete note, but I had been back to check these items off
When did you go back, do you think?
on that date, I believe, on the 7th of.
I see.
As I say, I was away from the office quite a lot at that time. As I say, so there was days where I was coming in and going early, or there was days when I was off in order to deal with family matters.
But just to
Yeah.
give this a final pinpoint on the documents, can you go to RBK 402993, please? This is an email which shows an appointment that was booked for you to attend at the building on the 30th of June 2016. Do you see that?
Yeah.
I put a visit in the diary for John Hoban on the 30th of June. And then if you go to RBK 403032, sorry, 403023, I'm so sorry. It's RBK 403023. We can see that David Hughes sends an email dated the 27th of June 2016 to you and to others. Hi John, I've just spoken to someone in your office and booked a time slot of 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. for the final walk around at Grenfell Tower. I've got the keys to the boxing club so we can check the items on the list from the letter of comfort. Now the letter of comfort, was that the letter written by John Allen we
Yes.
saw, which you drafted?
Yes.
The 2nd of June letter, yes.
Yes.
Does the final walk around, does that final walk around accord with your recollection of the purpose of that visit?
I think there was still some outstanding minor matters, but I believe I went back on the 7th of June to do the final inspection, because as I say, there was still outstanding. There was items that hadn't been cleared off from that.
And what did you inspect on that final occasion? Do you remember?
I think it. Can we go back to the letter of comfort, if I may?
Yeah, yes, of course. That is at RBK 30132224.
I think it could have been to do with the floor surface.
Is that item 4?
Yeah.
That's in the entrance door to the community room.
Yeah.
In the main entrance lobby.
Yeah.
I see.
I think they had to get some surface
Right.
to
There's-
fix that.
There's nothing in that comfort letter about the exterior cladding, is there?
No.
Right. Can we then turn to a different topic altogether, which is Regulation 38? At the time of your involvement in the Grenfell Tower project, Mr. Hoban, were you aware of Regulation 38 of the building regulations?
Yes.
Were you aware that the person carrying out the work was required to give fire safety information to the capital R responsible, capital P person, as defined under the Regulatory Reform Fire Safety Order 2005?
Yes.
You were. And they were required to do that not later than the date of the completion of the work. You recall that as an obligation?
In detail, when Regulation 38 came in, we had, there was a number of amendments, and we were given an in-house talk by John Jackson. I believe it came in some years previously.
2005.
Was it 2000? Yes.
Well, that was the date of the Regulatory Reform Order. Perhaps it's simpler just to go to the...
No, the Regulatory Reform came in, but Regulation 38 came in at a later stage. Did it or not?
Well, I just want to understand whether you, at the time of the project, when it was certainly in force, understood...
Yes.
Yes, okay. Now, let's have a look at the regulation. It's BMER 604. At page 24. This is actually part of Ms. Menzies' report to the inquiry. And she sets out on page 24 the regulation, and I want to look at Regulation 38 too. This is just for convenience. And it says that the person carrying out the work shall give fire safety information to the responsible person not later than the date of completion of the work or the date of occupation of the building or extension, whichever is the earlier. And then there's a definition under subsection 3A of fire safety information, that it's information relating to the design and construction of the building or extension and the services, fittings and equipment provided in or in connection with the building or extension, which will assist the responsible person to operate and maintain the building or extension with reasonable safety. Do you agree that this requirement, or did you understand at the time that this requirement applied to Grenfell Tower?
Yes.
Did you understand that under Regulation 17 of the building regulations, which we can go to if you need it, the local authority should not issue a completion certificate until it is satisfied that, among other things, Regulation 38 has been complied with?
When we were given the talk about this particular regulation, I asked the question if we needed all that information to be sent to us, and I was told, and it was common practice in the office, that we didn't need all that information in order to sign the job off, and that was the practice in the office.
Right. How would you, as a building control officer working at RBKC, satisfy yourself that Regulation 38 had been complied with before issuing a completion certificate on any project?
By asking if they had done it.
By asking who?
The contractor, if they provided that information to the to the building owner.
I see. So does that tell us that although you would ask them whether they'd done it, you didn't want to see what it was that they had done?
That's what we were told.
Okay. In respect of Grenfell, did you take any steps to satisfy yourself that Regulation 38 had been complied with?
I believe I asked David Hughes if he had sent the information. We got certain certificates and that, and I said, as far as I can recall, that he said that he was sending the information to TMO.
Right. Let's see if we can be as precise as we can, doing the best you can with your recollection. You say you think you asked, or believe you asked David Hughes.
I believe I asked.
Do you remember when you asked him?
Towards the end of the project.
Right. And this was just a conversation, was it, or was there an email or letter or something?
No, it was a conversation, because we talked about information that he needed to send to me, certain certificates.
Right. Did you record the assurance he'd given you anywhere in writing on your files?
I didn't.
Why is that?
I just didn't.
Given that this was a regulatory matter and
Yeah.
placed a
I-
statutory obligation on...
I believe that was the practice in the office. If you go through our records, that's the way it was done in the office.
So you're saying that the practice in the office was simply, is this right, to get an assurance from the contractor that they had provided the responsible person with the relevant information for compliance with Regulation 38, and then you didn't record that?
If you go through council's records, I believe that's what you will find.
Right. Completion certificate, and this is my last but one topic, and they're very short topics. You were, I think, were responsible for arranging the completion certificate for Grenfell Tower.
Correct.
And could we look at RBK 30018811? This is the completion certificate itself. And we can see that it's got an electronic signature of John Allen there.
Yeah.
Did you need his agreement before you issued the completion certificate?
No.
No. Did you apply his electronic signature, or did he, do you think?
That was on the system. It was standard. All the letters were automatically had his signature.
Oh, I see.
That's-
I see. So
Yeah.
what did you fill in then?
I just printed it out.
Yeah, but
Sorry.
you say it's a standard form. I just want to try and get a feel for what is it.
Well, the accolade would process that. Maybe I might have. If you put in certain information into accolade, it gets that information out automatically. It's into the actual computer system itself.
I see. So if you want a completion certificate, you just press a button on the accolade system, out it pops, with John Allen's signature on it, and all the details filled in.
Yes.
I follow. Do you accept that given that you hadn't satisfied yourself that Regulation 38 had been complied with, but had just had an assurance from David Hughes that that was the case, as you say, you shouldn't have issued a completion certificate on that basis alone?
That was the way it was done in the office.
I follow. That's what you're saying to us. But do you accept that as a matter of the regulation, you shouldn't have done it?
As I say, that's how we were told to deal with it at the time.
Do you also accept that you shouldn't have issued or procured the issue of a completion certificate because the refurbishment didn't comply, in particular, with requirement B4 of the building regulations?
As far as I'm concerned, it did comply with B4. I wouldn't issue a certificate if I knew it didn't comply.
But now we know that the exterior of the building did not comply.
Yes.
You accept now that that building certificate should not have been issued.
I accept that now. At the time, when I issued that, I issued that with the understanding that it did comply.
Final topic for you, at least at this stage, and that's the weeding of the paper file. As I understand it, at RBKC, is this right, that once a project was complete, there was a practice of weeding the paper file?
Correct.
And the file would be weeded by, is this right, the surveyor with responsibility for the file, or by somebody else?
Sometimes, mainly the surveyor doing the job. It was weeded sometimes by other people or managers if people had left.
What documents or information would be retained on the file after the weeding process?
There would be the structural drawings, plans, sections, and elevations showing the constructional details. Certificates, if they've been printed out. That would generally be it.
So
we wouldn't keep design calculations, as I say, because in a job like this, it could be hundreds of pages.
As the building control surveyor responsible for the Grenfell Tower project, would it have been you who weeded the Grenfell Tower
I believe so.
project file after the completion? Can you remember what it was in general that you discarded and what it was that you retained?
I can't.
Did you consult Paul Hansen about which documents relating to B1 and B5 should be retained?
No, he would have his own records on that.
Right.
We would keep the consultation documents. Sorry, because we had consulted with the brigade on 2 occasions, and we had letters back from them.
Those would stay on the file. Was there any process by which your weeding would be supervised by your line manager, so that you would have some sort of management input into what it was you were weeding?
Originally, some years ago, we would have to go to our managers, with the weeded file in order that they could unlock Accolade in order to process the certificate. But a decision was made that was no longer necessary.
Right. But after that decision was made, you say some years ago, but when was that? It's just so I get a feel for that.
I can't remember. John Jackson was the manager then.
Right. So long before the Grenfell Tower project.
Yes.
I see. Okay.
Yes. What happened many years ago? Because the managers decided that they wanted files weeded in order to process them onto the council system. So, and we actually at one stage we were tasked to do weeding maybe an hour or some period, and then say that certain managers weeded the files in order that they could be transposed onto microfiche or onto a computer record. So it was something that the managers, due to us moving, we didn't have archive storage in the council's offices anymore.
Just a short point. Is it right that no line manager you had on this project checked what you did and didn't weed on the Grenfell file? Right. Is it possible that you weeded the whole file so that nothing was left?
No.
Can I just show you a document, RBK 52479? This is an email from John Allen to Jago Williams within RBKC on the 15th of June 2017. This is the day after the fire. And he says, "Morning, Jago, I've been unable to find the electronic or paper file for Grenfell." And in the 4th line down, he says, "It may be that John weeded everything and nothing remains." Was that realistic, that you could have weeded the entire file so that there was nothing left of it?
No.
Do you agree that weeding a file to the point where it's not possible to tell whether what has and what doesn't have building control approval could make it more difficult to enforce?
Yes. As I say, it was a decision made by managers that the files would be weeded.
Yes.
It's not something I agree with, but we were instructed to do that.
Yes.
As I say, I don't think it's a good. It's not. Well, it shouldn't be the case. You should keep all information, in my view. But
Yes.
the managers decided this is what they wanted done.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I've got 2 short questions which, if I don't ask now, I'll have to ask after a natural break anyway.
You're going to want a break, aren't you?
Well, we are going to want a break. I'd rather ask these questions now so that those outside this room know that they have been asked rather than asking us to ask them again.
Yes.
Which will just
Right,
take up
brilliant.
time, if I may.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. First, can I just remind you of what you said in your evidence yesterday, where you said at day 45, page 29, lines 3 to 7, that you attended a training course presented by Celotex, which you thought was in 2005. That's what you said. Can we go, please, to RBK 3050786? Now, this is your application for membership of the ABE.
Yeah.
And it's signed by you at the bottom, I think, on the 1st of November 2012.
Yes.
And you can see that, and you've put in 2 referees there.
Yes.
The reason I want to show you this is that it attaches a training log,
Yes.
and we can see that starts on page, I think it's 10 of this document. Can we go to that? And you can see it starts there, and there it is. Is this an RBKC document, or is it one that you put together yourself for the purposes of this application, do you think?
We had a log originally, as I say, and as I say, it was something that was set out, and I would put in, fill in where the gaps or the dates,
Right.
when I attended visits, attended courses, but as you scroll down, if we may.
Yes, can we scroll down?
Yeah. Celotex, 2005.
Oh, yes. So, but I'm just
Sorry, no,
contemplate.
2002.
No, that's right. 22nd of May 2002. Before I get to that, I just wanted to ask you whether this was your document or an RBKC document.
This is a document that I had on my computer at the time.
So, but you compiled it yourself, did you, rather than it being a formal RBKC?
Yes, it's
Right.
something that I had on my desktop, for want of better words.
All right. Now, going to the first page in the top right-hand corner, it says update November 2012. So does that mean that this was a complete record of all the training that you'd done up to that date?
No,
Would it include RBKC internal training within the building control department?
no,
It wouldn't.
no.
So what did it not include? And if it's,
As
a,
I
if
say,
it's a long...
in-house, where we had tutorials or in-house
Okay.
discussions about the new regulations.
Now, if we go to page 11, we can see what you pointed out, which was a Celotex seminar on the 22nd of May 2002.
Yes.
Was that arranged for you by RBKC, or is that something you attended yourself off your own bat?
No, it would have been a lunchtime.
That was the lunchtime seminar, wasn't it?
Seminars that
Right.
they would have from time to
That was the
time.
one you were referring to yesterday, wasn't
Yes.
it? So we can now date that, 2002. And if we go back to the bottom of page 11, or go to the bottom of page 11, it stops, because this is the end of the document, on the 7th of November, 2005.
Yeah.
Does that tell us that you did no training, even in-house training, between the 7th of November 2005
No, that's
and
not the
November
case.
2012?
That's
So
not-
why does this document run out of steam on the 7th of November 2005?
I didn't have. I just completed I'd filled in every page that I could on it. On what was on my desktop.
I see. Did you have a continuation sheet held elsewhere?
No. I wouldn't be able to do spreadsheets.
Right. Going to a different topic, we've seen many, but not all, of your inspections between August 2014 and July 2016. Were you of the view over that period that the number and the frequency of site visits that you were in fact carrying out was appropriate? Or did you think that you could and should have done more but were just unable to do so?
My day was full. I was, as I say, I was doing as many site visits as I could at that particular time in relation to my workload.
Yes, it doesn't quite answer my question, though. My question really is, even though you were, as you explained to us, doing as much as you could for reasons you've given us, did you think that you could and should have done more, but were simply unable to do so because of the pressure of work and the other pressures on you?
Yes.
And what would you have wanted to do?
As I say, I would have liked to have just one area and focus on that area and the work that I had in that particular area.
Right. Now, finally, before the break, Mr. Chairman, if that's all right, one document I need to show you. I think I should. I showed you this morning an LABC certificate for RS 5000, which we have on their site. Can I just show you a different version? Right. I'm told I don't need to ask that question. Not quite sure why, but I'm sure there's a good reason.
Always listen to your junior.
But maybe it may be necessary to get back to that after the break, if it's appropriate. But Mr. Chairman, Mr. Hoban, I've come to the end of my prepared questions, and indeed some of my unprepared questions. It's normal that we take a break now. Mr. Chairman, should we do that?
I think we should. Mr. Hoban, I'm very conscious that the afternoon's gone on longer than perhaps most of us would have wished, but it was important to let counsel finish asking his questions.
Yeah.
And at this stage, I think he needs a minute or two just to check that everything has been covered. And sometimes we have questions sent in by people who are not in the room but are watching remotely. So we'll have a break now. I'm going to say until 10 to 5. I know it seems a little while, but it does take time to organise these things. So would you like to go with the usher and not talk to anyone, of course, while you're out of the room about your evidence or anything to do with it? And at 10 to 5, we'll see if there are any more questions.
Right.
Thank you very much. I think that should give you enough time, Mr. Millett.
I think that should. Thank you, Mr.
10
Chairman.
to 5, then, please. Okay. Would you ask Mr. Hoban to come back in, please? All right, Mr. Hoban, now we'll see if Mr. Millett's found any more questions for you. Yes, Mr. Millett.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have had a number of questions coming in from core participants, but on careful reflection, we feel we've covered them all or sufficiently for our purposes, which, Mr. Hoban, takes me to a final question, which we do ask people from time to time who have particular responsibility for spheres of activity. And it's this. We've been through 2 days of evidence now, and we've looked at a lot of material, and you've said a lot of things about it, and we're extremely grateful to you. Looking back on all of that material, and looking back on your involvement in the project as a whole, is there anything that you'd like to tell us that you think you should have done or would have done differently?
Yes, I wish I was able to have been given more time to deal with the particular project. I wish I'd been more formal in letter writing with when requesting information. I also wish that around the events of June in 2016, I'd taken more time away in order that I could have been able to be more focused at that particular time with my day-to-day things.
Yes. Well, Mr. Hoban, thank you very much indeed. Do you want to add something else?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Hoban, when you came in at the beginning of your evidence, I said that you would be given a chance to say what I think you want to say to the people who've been affected by the tragedy. So would you like to take that opportunity now?
Yeah. I'd like to add a few other things, if I may. In my considered opinion, that the building regulations at that particular time, particularly the approved documents, were ambiguous and confusing. And we can see that with particular reference to approved document B in the new volume that has come out, because it's a lot more clearer. It's a lot more clearer now. Clearer now. The other thing or observation I'd like to make is that in the period from 2013 to 2017, when I left Kensington, the Building Control Department, they lost 10 surveyors who had 230 years experience, and there was one replacement who was a graduate, and I don't believe that's the correct way to run a department. That's my own personal view. The other thing I'd like to say is that if we had a regulatory body like we had with the Greater London Council, and the regulations and building acts and constructional bylaws that we had at that particular time, and the support network of the experts that administered the regulations at that time, I don't think we'd be in a position where we are now. Sitting here talking about people that lost their lives. and also all these buildings with flammable cladding, and the stress and the uncertainty that leaves with the people living in those buildings now. You know, as I say, you've got hundreds of buildings with materials that could cause a fire at any time, and it's still up there. That's what I'd like to say about that. I'd like to have a moment, if I may, just to compose myself, because I want to talk to people, on the people that were directly affected by the tragic events that happened on the 14th of June, three years ago.
Will you take your time?
Yeah, thank you. I am truly heartbroken about what happened that night, particularly for those who lost their lives. You know, the children, the brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, fathers, mothers, grandfathers and grandmothers that lost their life. And I've never forgotten the people that night got out with their lives. Their lives has changed so dramatically since then. And likewise, the people that lost, or the families that lost loved ones that night, you know, their lives will never be the same. And I just want to say that I'm truly heartbroken for that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Hoban. Can I just thank you on behalf of all of us for coming here to give your evidence. It's taken longer than I think we expected, and it's probably been a very difficult experience for you.
Yeah.
We are truly grateful to you for coming along, and it's been very valuable to hear what you've been able to tell us. So thank you very much indeed.
Right. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
And now you're free to go.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, Mr. Millett, that is that for today, I think.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it is. And I think that is that for the week. And we will start again on Monday morning with the next witness, who I believe is Mr. John Allen.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, that's it for today and for this week. We'll resume at 10 o'clock on Monday. Thank you all very much.